My guest tonight is an entrepreneur who started one of the first independent rap labels, Rap-A-Lot Records. He has a new memoir called The Art and Science of Respect. Please welcome J. Prince. Welcome to the show.
Privileged and honored to be here.
It's so great to have you because so many times in conversations in and around hip-hop, the culture, the music, and what it's created, the name J. Prince comes up. Many people don't know that you were the name and the inspiration behind some of the greatest names in hip-hop that, that we know today. But your story is what you talk about in this book. When you went into music, when you started your company, you had a specific purpose, and that was to change your life and your mom's life. Why was that so important to you?
It was important because all of my life we lived in the projects, and I would hear my mom, wish for a home. I want a home one day. So, my inspiration came from, watching her deal with poverty, watching my grandmother deal with poverty. And, at the age of 8, 9 years old, I vowed that I was going to be the one to break the poverty curse on my family.
Right. And what I really found, insightful in the book is you talk about that curse and how it can affect the community, how it can affect the people. You didn't go on to create just a record label. You also went on to make sure that your company employed people who couldn't get opportunities, people who had records, people who had been caught up in the justice system. That seems like a risky proposition, but you said, no, I'm gonna hire these ex-cons that nobody wants to hire. Why?
Well, that meant a lot to me because I grew up with a lot of these guys, and I witnessed the system not being willing to give them a second chance. And once I got in a position of power and, had an understanding with the guys, and you told them you can't straddle the fence. If you're willing to change your life, then, I will extend an invitation and opportunity for you to do just that. And, we all came together and built the #1 independent record label of the year, for years.
Right.
Yeah.
You were behind a lot of the music that came from the South. A lot of what hip-hop is today, people credit to J. Prince. In the Art of Science, the Art of Science of Respect, there are a lot of conversations in and around respect in hip-hop. A lot of the times that connotation comes from, gangs or violence. People go like, oh, the only way you get respect is by shooting. But J. Prince, the one thing you always hear people say is, no, J. Prince, people respect the businessman. People respect the work ethic. Was that really important for you, in your career?
Yeah, very important, and it begins with giving respect. I come from a family, I come from a 114-year-old great-grandmother who emphasized the importance of respect, and I learned, and I carried it with me in my business and personal levels, and I was able to, live off of those same standards that she left with me with, years ago.
Right.
And it worked today.
You're in many ways, reading through this book, what I loved about it is you're like the Forrest Gump of hip-hop. Like, I'm serious, there are so many amazing stories in this book where you're like, you were there, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. Like, it had a tragic ending, but you spoke to Tupac and Biggie about squashing their beef. At a time when many people were like, this is what hip-hop is about, you said to them they need to squash the beef. You even warned Biggie not to travel to cities that didn't want him. You talk about that in the book. That seems counter to what people want hip-hop to be, and yet you didn't want that. Why?
Well, I feel like somebody have to have some sense. Somebody have to know how to think. You know what I mean? You get a bunch of people that can't think together, and, a bad ending is going to take place. So I try to separate myself and think above and beyond, the standards. And sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Right, and now a lot of people may not know this, but the foreword of this book was written by Drake. Yeah. And people go like, why would Drake write that foreword? But it was actually your son who discovered Drake on MySpace, and then it was yourself who put Drake together with Cash Money and with Lil Wayne, which is the reason we know Drake today. Are the rumors true that you were, again, a force of peace between Drake and Pusha T, where you stepped in and said, hey, I don't think this beef needs to happen?
Yeah, most definitely. And, you know, I felt that way because I felt like the beef crossed the lines of music. You know, when you talk about one's mother, his father, and then you go on and, you know, his friend whom is dying, then I feel like that crosses the guidelines where music is concerned.
Right.
And once you do that, then that's how you have a Tupac and a Biggie situation,
right.
because those guys have no breaks after that.
Right.
So, you know, I felt like I should speak up. I did, because, you know, with Drake, we're about a movement, not a moment.
Right, right. It's a movement, not a moment. Your life has been a movement, moving from one place to the next, an independent rap label that in many ways started everything we know as hip-hop today, what people are experiencing. Where does J. Prince go from here? What are you still trying to do?
Well, I'm having fun. I'm enjoying life. And you know, I'm talking to a lot of movie guys right now.
Right.
Because, you know, there's an interest in a movie since I have put this book out, and I think it's going to be a pretty good movie.
Yo, man, as someone who's read it, I can agree with that. Thank you so much for being on the show. The Art of Science and Respect will be available July 6th. J. Prince, everybody.